Hi guys, just to answer some of the questions about glue. One of the biggest questions I get asked is what glue do you use? And the answer is I use quite a few different ones for different jobs. So I'm going to take you through a few of the different glues that I use and the reasons that I use them. I'm going to start off with my main one that I use a lot of, which is this one. This one is a super glue with an activator. It's high viscosity, which means it's quite thick. It's not really thick, there's thicker ones, but it is quite thick. I also use same product but in medium viscosity, which is runnier. I only use that for one specific job. I also use super glue gel, which is really thick, as the word gel would imply, and that does also work with the activator. Occasionally I will use epoxy glue, which is a two-part glue that you have to mix together, and the other couple of things which are classed as glue, although it's not, it's an epoxy clay, which I use, and hot glue. I'll probably start with the ones that I use least. My hot glue's plugged in, so I'm going to go straight in with that one. I pretty much only use hot glue for gluing of toe bones into hoofs, and the reason I use hot glue is it stays molten enough for you to get in a nice position, and there's usually quite a lot of play, so to make that amount of space up with an ordinary glue would be quite messy, so I tend just to use hot glue. The way I do this is with the glue gun turned on and a glue stick in, a nice big blob at the bottom, and then push the toe bone in to the hoof to the desired position, and then just let that cool, and that holds quite well for those two different materials together. I've not had any problems with that. If you've got a good fit, you could super glue, but you'd want to be using a really thick one, and glue stick is way cheaper than super glue gel. So that's the hot glue. That's the only thing I would use hot glue for. Next glue is super glue, so I'll go on to super glue. This is the high viscosity. So they come in a pack like this with an activator, or you can just buy individual bottles. If you buy this brand in an individual bottle, the same glue just has a different packaging, but you can buy that on its own. If you use this glue on its own, I think this one's open. When you buy these, you have to snip the top off. No, that one's not open. I'll just find one that is. I'll snip the top on that. Another new one. I'll grab my Stanley blade. So let's open one of these. Of course, the further down you cut, the bigger hole you've got. So if you're going to be doing big gluings, you can cut further down and have more glue coming out. So this is high viscosity, so it's reasonably thick. I've just got a couple of scrap bits of bone here, so I'll put a drop on there, and I'll just stick that other bone to it. Now, if I left that, it would set. I could sit and hold it, and it would set, but it would take a long time. So, still wet. Yep, you can see it would stay wet for quite a while. You would need to hold that for a few minutes. So, the reason I buy this pack with the activator is, although that glue will set eventually, so it's still, the glue's still on there, it's not set yet, the activator spray, and now same bone, same glue. I just hold that for a few seconds, and now that's stuck. So it really makes the glue set absolutely immediately, and it is strong once it's set. It still takes a bit of time to cure, and even when it's setting, you've got time. It's set now, but I've still got time to adjust, so I can still bend that a little bit. So you've still got adjustment time. But then, if I was to glue in a joint like that, once it's set, if you want to make it even stronger, you can apply a very small film of super glue and another spray, and that'll just fill in any little crevices and make it even stronger. So that's the main glue that I use. I use Sudel brand purely because I can get that from my local DIY shop, but there are other brands that are available, and they do an equal job. The next glue is the gel. So super glue, it does the same job as this, but the difference is the consistency. The consistency of this one, it's literally like, you can see how that's perked up. I don't know if you can, I'll move it nearer to the lens. It's actually, it will sit up tall. It is really good if you've got bones that don't quite fit together really well, such as a femur into a pelvis, so like the ball joint into a pelvis on a smaller animal, and that you want to glue, or a shoulder blade onto the bone, because it fills all the gaps. So that's super glue gel. Same thing applies. If you do that, it'll set eventually, but it will take, it can take a couple of hours because it's so thick. But if you want to speed things up, even though it's a different brand, it's the same product. It's cyanacrylate, so it does take a little bit longer because it's thicker. But now that's stuck. So that's gel. So you'd use that for filling more of a gap. Next glue would be epoxy, which is 2-part epoxy. Basically, it dispenses equal amounts of adhesive and hardener. You need to mix these together on a tray. It's quite messy, it's quite runny, it's also permanent, so it's a good glue, but beware, it can take 5 minutes to set, 90 seconds to set. You can get different ones, so look at the speed. You can get some that take 30 minutes to set, so choose the one that's going to suit the job best for the amount of time that you want before the glue actually sets. But be aware, even with a 90-second glue, it is enough time for it to drip, and drips of this glue are very hard to remove. Now, the advantage of super glue over the epoxy is, should you make a mistake and you want super glue apart, you can soak this in acetone, or you can buy a similar bottle to this called Super Glue Remover, and that will soften up that glue enough to get the joint undone. Or you can, if two big bones, for example, if you glued, if you glued these together and you wanted them apart to change the position, then if you soak them in a bath of acetone, that super glue will just melt away. So that is a big advantage of the super glue over epoxy resin. Epoxy is good for such as gluing your sacrum into the pelvis. It's a good glue for that because there's usually quite a lot of a gap between these two faces and the pelvis. So that's a good time to use the epoxy. The other product that I use a lot of is Milliput, and this is, again, it's an epoxy like the epoxy glue, but this is epoxy clay. So when you open up a Milliput box, as well as the instructions, you'll find 2 tubes of products. Same as the glue, you've got one is the adhesive or the clay, and the other one is the hardener. I've got one started here, so I'll take a little bit out just to show. Again, you mix equal parts. You will need to measure this manually, so I'll just take a little bit off each. It's all covered in the instructions, but basically this is clay. It doesn't dry like normal clay in so much as it will shrink and crack. This will not shrink and will not crack. It dries really hard. It can be drilled, screwed, it can be sanded to shape, and you can also use water to smooth it if you want to get a smooth finish. So you need this for a few minutes, and this is the kind of glue. You can use it to stick bones together or fill gaps in bones. So if I had a big gap that I wanted to fill, this is a good product. I also use it for making up the cartilage on animals. So where the ribs finish and the sternum is underneath, you join those with wire, and this is moulded over the wire. I will be doing a separate video for that, so remember to subscribe and get notifications, and then you'll see when I do the video for that, that will be explained more fully. The setting time on this product varies on the temperature, but it's usually about 3 hours. This can be moulded. My main use is for using it over the cartilage, so I would mould that over a wire and then just let it set. So that's replacing the cartilage that gets lost in the cleaning process. Then the other uses for Milliput, as well as filling joints between bones. If you wanted to fill a joint, for example, you had a joint that you didn't like the look of and you wanted to smooth that out, you could fill that. That would add more strength. Let's say you're missing a bone, so you're missing a small bone or even a big bone. You can literally sculpt this into shape. So these are just little seismoids. Let's say I'm missing a seismoid. So there we go. You can make a duplicate bone with this, let it harden, and you can then drill that just the same as bone and use it as a replacement. I've used it to make toes, ribs, and also do repairs. If you've got a vertebrae, for example, and this is broken off, you can use the Milliput to reform that piece of bone that's missing. So that's Milliput. The product comes in different grades, so I always use the white one, which is super fine. It's the nicest one to work with, it gives the nicest finish, and it's white. The other ones are green. You can get a terracotta one as well. They're a little bit more coarse and they don't look as nice on a skeleton once they're finished. So the super fine is it's like a porcelain repair really. So that one is a really good product that I can definitely recommend. So that's it, guys. That's the different glues that I use. Obviously they're not all held together with glue. There's a certain amount of wire and drilling involved. I'll be covering that, and that will be another separate video. So again, if you subscribe, you'll get to see that. The other thing to say is when you're working with super glue, it will stick your fingers together really easily. It's actually designed for gluing skin back together. So be very careful when you're using super glue, especially with the activator spray, because it will set really quick and it does take quite a lot of getting apart. If you do accidentally stick your fingers together, soak it in water, or even better still, if you've got like super glue remover, you can use super glue remover or acetone, but obviously you don't want your hands in chemicals for too long. It's better to be careful and not have to use that. So that's it really. Subscribe and keep up to date with the forthcoming and upcoming videos that I'm going to be doing. The next ones will be hopefully some bone assembly, but before I did the assembly I just wanted to explain about the glues. So when you see me using the glues, I don't need to answer any questions about these products. So that's it for now, guys. I hope you found that helpful and interesting. I know for many people this activator spray is the biggest question, and it's a really big game changer. I've seen people holding two bones together with tripods and different contraptions, and they'll leave it there overnight and they'll build a skeleton one bone at a time, and they don't realise that there's a product there you can just use, spray it, and you can just keep sticking bones every 10 seconds. These are quite set now, they're not going anywhere. So yeah, hopefully that will make life a lot easier for you. Cool, catch you soon.